Hello, scholars. I have invaded the theater department today. I was going to do my recordings outside, but if you've been on the Fall River campus here at Bristol Community College, you know that it's extremely loud due to all the construction. So I've come inside. I've co-opted probably the largest indoor space that we have, and here we are. And today I want to get us started on finding relevant sources of information for our first big speech of the semester. And we're going to do that by following a really simple pattern. Claims, evidence, and reasoning. What this just basically means is when we make a claim that isn't common knowledge or is like some very exact statistic or definition, we need to provide evidence. And then after we provide evidence, we have to explain some sort of reasoning for providing this claim and evidence to us. Because we have to keep in mind throughout that the audience, of course, is the most important part of public speaking, right? So that reasoning has to be focused on exactly the people you'll be talking to. And we're going to be in our groups this week as we do our discussions, so you're going to have a better idea of who it is that you're going to be explaining things to this semester. But the really tricky thing about claims is we can claim really anything that we would like. And we're seeing this happen on the national political stage on both sides of the aisle constantly right now. But to parcel it down to a more ridiculous level, we can just do this. I can make the claim that the Oscars had it wrong. Joaquin Phoenix, despite the fact they did a brilliant job in the movie Joker, shouldn't have won Best Actor. He should not have gotten the Academy Award, that Oscar. It should have gone instead to Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel should have won the Best Actor Academy Award. In fact, Vin Diesel should have won all the awards. Set design, best special effects, best animated short, Vin Diesel, right? I can make those claims. There's nothing stopping me, right? I mean, you can turn off the video, but it doesn't stop me from making that claim. And I may not be right when I make that claim, because we have to provide some sort of evidence when we make claims like that. And when we look at the evidentiary body of Vin Diesel's work, and we think about, I mean, certainly there's no evidence to say that Vin Diesel should have won the Oscar for Best Animated Short, because he's not an animated short, he's a person, he's an actor. So that evidence doesn't stand up at all. And when we look at his body of work as far as acting, I mean, sure, the dude looks good, growling his lines, and he seems like he's a really nice, shy guy in real life, and he sits behind the wheel of a car looking very intense. But those aren't the things we look for when we're calling Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, right? We're looking for more grit, more realism. People that immerse themselves in a role that just really become those things. And then we have to give that reasoning. And when I start to reason through the paltry amount of evidence I have as to why Vin Diesel should have won Best Actor, that gets tough. Because I've got to convince all of you, right? And then when we go on even further, I would have to convince the entire Motion Picture Association. And I just don't think that's going to happen. So let's talk about where to find evidence and what does and doesn't work. So here's when we really need it. When you use statistics, and I mean exact statistics, right? So if you tell me something like Rhode Island has roughly 1.3 million people in it, we don't necessarily need a citation for that, because that's a guesstimate. And we all already kind of know that's really close to being true. But if you tell me the exact number of people in Rhode Island, well, then I need a statistic for it, right? We need evidence when we're giving information that isn't common knowledge. And we have to be really careful with that, because not everybody has the same background as we do. Take me, for instance. If I come in here and I start talking to you about the 5 canons of rhetoric, and I tell you that expositio is an important part of our public speaking dialogue, I've probably already lost you, right? And I need to talk about where that came from. That's from Quintilian in ancient Rome, and the 5 canons were a set of rules that he put down to help us understand how to make better arguments. And that's important, of course, because all of you are going to be arguing for a lot of things, not just in this class, but throughout your lives. So I got to go through all that stuff to give you that claim with a solid bit of evidence as to where it came from, why we should trust it, and then why it matters to you. And then when you use a source citation, we have to hear these things. We need to know who said it. Could be a person, could be an organization. We need to know why they're qualified to say it, which might actually be more important than the person's name. Because when you give us a random name, well, how do we trust that? We don't know these people. We don't know every single name in the whole canon of the world. In fact, when I said quintillion to you a moment ago, many of you were probably like, who dat, right? Quintilian was a Roman orator and senator. Is still today well regarded as kind of one of the godfathers of rhetoric, of argument. Now we need to know where they said it, and Quintilian wrote these things down in his rules for argument. So a lot of you are going to be finding information about your VPS softwares, and so we need to know, like, who is saying this thing about the VPS? Why should we trust this person to say it? Because the better you explain the credibility of your citations, the more credible you are going to sound. And then where they said it. Did that come from a book, a journal article, a magazine article, a newspaper, things of that nature? And we're going to work through what does and doesn't work for this presentation, and really kind of for any presentation you're going to be doing in your other classes and in your personal lives. So please, for the moment at least, can't cite yourselves. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that because at this point in time, I don't think any of you have reached expert status in video projection services and business and communication studies. You're here because you haven't. You're here to learn about these things, to get closer and closer to expertise. So right now, you aren't considered experts in the subject matter. I think you'll get there. I mean, you're working towards graduating. You're all focusing on your studies. You're doing good work in the class so far. So in a matter of time, you'll be able to do that. The other side of the coin is this. Like, if you're just relying on your own self-information, as we've been doing in a lot of our posting, well, then you're not learning to do research, are you? And that's something you're going to have to know as we move forward. So instead, go and talk to your professors, maybe. Conduct personal interviews. We've reached this weird stage in humanity where, like, we don't want to talk to people anymore, right? And when you hear someone has gone out and actually conducted an interview, there's a little bit more credibility to it. Like, we really think that's a cool thing that's happening. So don't be afraid to go and actually ask someone questions and then cite them. I'm not telling you that you can't use famous quotes in any presentation. I mean, they're nice because we gravitate towards them. Like, we all know like things that Abraham Lincoln said. We're all probably familiar with many Martin Luther King Jr. references. We're all familiar with the things that have been said even in some of our movies, right? But when you think about it a little bit, Abraham Lincoln here and Amelia Earhart next to him and Martin Luther King Jr., none of them were really talking about what we're talking about in this class. Like, Abe Lincoln wasn't going, 7 years ago, I got to get this right, because later on, people at Bristol Community College are going to want to talk about like Skype, and so maybe they'll want to quote me. And that just wasn't happening. Certainly these men and women said amazing things, and I'm happy to have you talk about them. But they don't necessarily have to do it with what we're talking about. So don't just rely on those. You can use them to get attention, but after that, they sort of don't do anything for us. What we need are recognized experts, right? Like, Steve Jobs is one of those guys that we still talk about, even though he's been gone for almost 10 years now. And he was certainly one of those people that was a visionary in the electronics field, helping to launch the iPhone, the iMac, really doing so much for personal computing and handheld devices that here we are 10 years later, and it's still really great to sort of allude to what he was saying, what he was doing. Take this with a grain of salt, please. I'm not saying here that you can't cite websites. In fact, I'm going to have you go and look at websites for your source citation activity. What I mean here is, please don't say to us, hey, at http://www.newyorktimes.com, that you get bogged down going through all this stuff. Rather than that, just please tell us the journalist that works for the New York Times, so we get that journalist name, you give their credibility, so-and-so is a journalist for the New York Times, and then explain what they were saying, right? Now, it's the same source when you give the whole web address and you say the journalist and the New York Times, but honestly, you know which one sounds more credible, which one sounds better, which one sounds smoother. So please, like, do yourself a favor and make yourself sound more professional. So we go find authors, we find journalists, we find reporters. We report from them. rather than saying the website. And it really, if you want to look at it from like a weird technical level, websites don't create information. Like if I log on to msn.com, the website has not achieved sentience. It's not putting news information up there for me. Some person or organization is behind that. Finally, please, no dictionaries, no encyclopedias. All right? I already got this set up. So here, let me explain exactly why we don't cite Wikipedia, and we'll do that by going to Wikipedia itself. So here we are on Wikipedia. Great site, absolutely love Wikipedia. I'm not logged in here. I think this is important for you to know, and we're going to go to the Fast and Furious film franchise. The Fast Saga, there we go, perfect. So I'm going to continue on my Vin Diesel spread. And up here, you'll note, not logged in. That's important. Let's take a look here. We've got a list of films in the main saga. There's 8 films. Let's go to Fast 5. I don't know why. I'm just randomly picking one of them. And here's a really great thing when you're looking through Wikipedia and you just want to mess around. When we look next to any of these headings, when it says your plot, there's a little button next to it that says Edit. Now, I'm not going to click that here. When we go to Cast, there's also a button that says Edit. Now, if I click on that, what happens? It says here, you're not logged in. Your IP address will be publicly visible if you make any edits. But I am in the editing screen, not logged in. I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom where kind of the nobody actors are. Let's see here, the central cast is rounded by Porter and Seekers. And we have a number of photographers. And we have people reprising their role from other films. So let's see here. Eva Mendes appears in uncredited cameo. And uncredited reprising role as Agent So-and-so from Fast and Furious 2. While Christopher Anderson, my name, I spelled reprises wrong. Represses. Reprises his role as a boss. And terrible grammar in there, but down at the bottom it says show preview, show changes, and publish changes. And if I click publish changes, and we go down here and look, I just put myself into the cast of Fast and Furious 5. Seriously, I just, in 30 seconds, made it a fact that I was in Fast and Furious 5. And if that doesn't explain to you why you should never cite Wikipedia, I don't know what does. Now, there are some pages on there that you can't edit because people go in and mess with it a lot. Like Tom Cruise, you can't edit Tom Cruise's page. But we can go to any number of movies, any number of web pages, any number of ideas, and any of you can go in, click the edit button, and change things. And this might be here for a couple of weeks. It might be here for a couple of hours. But right now, it is, in fact, a fact on Wikipedia that I was in Fast and Furious 5. Just crazy. So, there it is, folks. No dictionaries, no encyclopedias, no Wikipedia. And I'm not telling you can't go look at those things, but it's a much better source for you to go and look in a textbook, at a newspaper, in a journal of some sort, because that's a closer representation of where that information came from and a better enunciation of the truth, because I can't go in and change a journal article. I can't go to the New York Times and change their articles there. And I certainly can't grab your textbook out of your hands from wherever you're sitting across our computer screen and change those facts. All right? So, please hop to your research assignment. I hope it's not too arduous for you. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you all online here real soon.